More breaking news that's coming in at the moment in a big boost for the Indian Army. We understand 3 Apache choppers have reached India. It's the first batch of helicopters that have arrived from the US, and the choppers have arrived at UP's Hindon Air Base. Well, the Apache helicopters, remember, are one of the world's most advanced attack helicopters, and these have arrived at the Hindon Air Base from the US. My colleague Vishnu Shom joining us on the broadcast here. Vishnu, getting us more details about that. So the first batch of helicopters have arrived from the US, and this definitely is going to give more boost for the Indian Army, Vishnu.
Well, for the Indian Army, remember, it's a small order of this Apache helicopters. The Indian Air Force already operates 22 Apaches. But as part of a goal of having its own attack helicopter fleet, the Indian Air Force pressed hard for Apaches of its own. So they are going to be getting 6 Apache helicopters, of which 3 have arrived at the Hindon Air Force Base earlier on today on board a giant Ukrainian-manufactured AN-124 transport. These will then be deployed to the units where they're assigned as they build up to the total number of helicopters which are to arrive. These are painted in a sand camouflage scheme, which essentially implies their role, which will be for attack in the desert against armored formations, including tanks and other targets. So they would be in support of Indian armored formations operating on the Western Front. Unclear whether these would also be deployed at high altitudes in the Leh-Ladakh region, as the Indian Air Force's Apache helicopters have been on occasion, but this is an important force multiplier for the Indian Army.
All right. Thank you so much, Vishnu, for getting us those details there. Well, this is the big development now coming in at the moment. Indian Army has now added 3 Apache helicopters in its fleet that were received at the Hindon Air Base today, and these have arrived from the US just a while back, and we understand this is being seen as one of the world's most advanced attack helicopters, Vishnu, as we've been talking about it earlier. How does it add to the strength of the Indian Army? All right, Vishnu will be joining us back in just a bit. Meanwhile, this is the latest that's coming in at the moment. Well, photographs also that have come in from the Hindon Air Base in UP. Well, the first batch of Apache helicopters received from the US finally arrived at the Hindon Air Base, and the Indian Army has said the procedures, including the assembling, joint receipt, inspection, induction, would be followed as per protocol. These 3 Apache attack helicopters have been received at the Hindon Air Base, and as per Indian Army officials, these are expected to be deployed in Jodhpur by the Indian Army. All right, my colleague Vishnu Shom back with us on the broadcast. Vishnu, well, we've been talking about it. Help us understand, how is this going to add to the strength of the Indian Army now?
Well, as I mentioned, the Indian Army is looking to enhance its firepower in terms of its helicopter formations. The Indian Army already operates an attack version of the advanced light helicopter called the Rudra, which is entirely armed with anti-tank missiles, with air-to-air missiles as well. This is now the Apache, which is considered the world's most advanced attack helicopter of its type. There's been a huge process of the Indian Army getting these. There was, in a sense, a real decision that needed to be taken about whether the Indian Air Force would be the only operator of this aircraft, or the Indian Army would get a couple of these as well. Finally, it was decided that 22 of the helicopters would be acquired for the Indian Air Force, all of which have been inducted into service, and a handful, approximately 6 specifically, will be acquired for the Indian Army. These are in a desert camouflage, a sand camouflage. These variants of the Apache will be used to hit, tank formations out in the desert, semi-armored structures, armored structures. They are extremely advanced. They come with state-of-the-art radars and the ability to, data link amongst themselves. In other words, share targeting information. They are armed with a missile called the Hellfire missile, which has a fairly robust range to approximately to more than 5 kilometers, and are capable of piercing the armor. So this is bad news for Pakistan's tank formations. These would be essential, absolutely, in any Indian armored thrust in the West.
Absolutely. Well, we understand the Indian Army had signed a $600 million deal in 2020 for 6 Apaches, and there has been some delay also in the delivery of the first batch of the choppers. More are expected to arrive in some time, Vishnu?
These are 3 which have come in now. They've come into the Hindon Air Force Base. They landed at Hindon earlier on today. There are 3 more which are expected to come into service. And with that, the entire complement would be received by the Indian Army. This is the first order. Whether there would be further orders, we'll have to see. This is an entirely imported unit, and it complements the existing attack helicopters in service with the Indian Army.
Okay, thanks so much, Vishnu, for getting us those details there. Well, big development now coming in at the moment. We understand this is the photograph also that has come in from the Indian Air Base where the Apache helicopters, we understand, were delivered. They've arrived at the Hindon Air Base, and these have been delivered from the US. And we understand, as per this deal, the Indian Army is expected to receive 6 Apaches, and all right, that's the video also that you see on your TV screens there. Let's also listen in to the audio there for a bit. Well, the Army has called it as the milestone moment. India has received the first batch of Apache helicopters from US. The first consignment of the helicopters from the US has arrived in India. And we understand the Indian Army also said the protocols relating to assembly and joint receipt inspection will also follow after that. But that's the video, Vishnu, that we see on your TV screens there. The first video of the Apache helicopters at the Hindon Air Base in UP. All right, Indian Army has received the first consignment of Apache helicopters from the US, and these helicopters are going to be deployed in Jodhpur by the Indian Army. We understand the Indian Army confirms the development in a post that was shared on Twitter also a while back with images shared. Now that's the video on your TV screens there. Well, where it's written Indian Army inducts Apache. It's a milestone moment for Indian Army as the first batch of Apache helicopters for Army aviation arrive in India today. These are state-of-the-art platforms that will bolster the operational capabilities of the Indian Army significantly. All right, Vishnu, that's the first video of the Apache helicopter that we see on our TV screens there.
Yeah, that's right. Well, these are being tested now. They've come in earlier on today. They are in built-up form. It's just the rotors of the helicopter, which essentially were being attached earlier on today. They would be flight tested. There is a process of acceptance which would also take place. They would presumably be Boeing engineers. It's a Boeing manufactured helicopter who would be there as part of the acceptance process. This goes on for a couple of days. There would possibly be weapon systems trials, so that would possibly have been done in the United States itself. The Apache is also equipped with a gun which can be used against various targets, firing different types of ammunition. But the primary weapon, in addition to the gun, is the Hellfire missile, of which it can carry more than 8, depending on the configuration that it has. It can also be equipped with the Stinger air-to-air missile, which is important in the context of how warfare is evolving, because with the threat of drones now, these can realistically be used to engage drones and other helicopters as well. So the footage that you actually see on your screens of these Apache helicopters is interesting because, it's the first time that the Indian Army has got this platform. They have wanted this for a very long period of time. It's finally been delivered. As I mentioned a little while earlier on, there are 6 that the Indian Air Force is getting. So it's not a very large buy, but it does sort of add to their firepower. The Indian Army has its own corps of attack helicopter formations and pilots. They primarily use the Rudra platform, which is a weaponized version of the advanced light helicopter. But with this, it adds to their offensive firepower in support of tank formations out in the west primarily. Whether these would also be deployed up in the Ladakh region or not, we are yet to see. But it's interesting. The camouflage pattern, I would say, suggests in the sand scheme could be deployed either in the Western Desert or it could be deployed in the Leh-Ladakh region as well.
Okay. All right, and that's what in this tweet that has been put out by the Indian Army that says it's a milestone moment for Indian Army as the first batch of Apache helicopters for Army aviation arrive, and these state-of-the-art platforms will further bolster the operational capabilities of the Indian Army significantly, Vishnu. Well, that's the tweet that has been put out by the Indian Army, Vishnu. Well, it says it's a milestone moment for Indian Army, and it's definitely going to further bolster the operational capabilities of the Indian Army further.
Pilot and a weapon systems operator. The way it is configured is that the weapon systems operator typically sits in the front, operating the weapon systems, which will be, locking on to targets, including enemy tanks or whatever they're deployed against. And the pilot would sit in the other cockpit in the twin-seater. These are one where pilot and one weapon systems operator, one behind the other. And then, they would be engaging targets as and when it sort of emerges that targets are there. They would often fly in formation. They would share targeting information. The Indian Air Force operates a very advanced variant of this called the Apache Longbow. The Longbow is a radar system. These would potentially work, alongside Indian Air Force Apaches as well, where, as I mentioned, the sharing of data across a large area where these helicopters operate would be done simultaneously. Let me explain to you why data sharing in the context of armed helicopter operations is significant. When you deploy these helicopters and you use a radar as advanced as the Longbow, which some of these helicopters are equipped with, the Indian Air Force ones for sure, then, you can transmit targeting information. So if one particular helicopter has targeting data, they've detected particular targets, they can actually pass on the coordinates seamlessly using a data link to one of the other attack helicopters in the formation, which can then be used to attack that target. The platform which detects a target doesn't necessarily have to be the one that attacks. So the Indian Air Force has 22 of these. The Indian Army has gotten 6 of these. These will now be integrated with the Rudra attack helicopters of the Indian Army, with the weaponized version and made in India of the advanced light helicopter. These are, of course, substantially more capable. These are heavy attack helicopters and widely considered to be the most advanced in the world.
All right. Well, Apache is manufactured by U.S. defense giant Boeing, and it's armed with a powerful 30 mm chain gun, laser and radar guided Hellfire missiles also for precision strikes, and this definitely brings adds to a major boost to the Indian Army. It also features the Longbow radar mounted above the rotor, allowing the Apache to detect, track and prioritize the threats without direct exposure. Well, we understand under the 2015 agreement earlier, India had first acquired 22 Apache helicopters for the Indian Air Force, and the 6 new ones are being inducted now for the Indian Army Aviation Corps, as per information that's coming in. This is that's the video on your TV screens there, the first video of the Apache helicopter now that has come in from the Hindon Air Base in UP. Here, well, the first batch has been delivered to India from the US.